There is an old saying among the species of the galactic concordat, a saying passed down through generations of diplomats, soldiers, and war historians alike. Never poke the sleeping giant. The Vreth did not believe in old sayings. On the morning of what they called their Day of Glory, 3 Vreth warships dropped out of FTL directly above Outpost Kestrel-7, a small human mining and communications station orbiting the dead moon of Tarvis 4. 43 men and women. A skeleton crew. No military escort. No orbital defense grid. Just workers. Just people doing their jobs, 2,200 light-years from Earth. The Vreth opened fire without a single word of warning. They destroyed the station in 11 seconds. And then, with the smoking debris still drifting through space, they sent a single transmission back to their homeworld. Short. Triumphant. 3 words in their own language, which when translated into English meant simply, "It has begun." They were right. It had begun. They just had no idea what they had actually started. To understand why what happened next happened, you need to understand the Vreth. They were not monsters, not in the way you might picture. They were intelligent, organized, proud. A reptilian species with burnished copper-colored scales and 4 arms, the upper 2 built for fine manipulation, the lower 2 built for war. They had been spacefaring for over 800 years. And in that time, they had built an empire that spanned 19 star systems. The Vreth Dominion, as they called themselves, operated on a simple and brutal philosophy: strength was the only currency that mattered. Diplomacy was just war conducted with words. Every treaty was temporary. Every alliance was a stepping stone. You either dominated, or you were dominated. There was no third option in their view of the universe. They had conquered 6 other species before humanity entered the picture. 3 of those species no longer existed. When humans first made contact with the broader galaxy 40 years before the attack on Outpost Kestrel-7, the Vreth had watched with interest, and then with something close to amusement. Humans were strange creatures. Small. Soft. Individually fragile, with no natural armor, no venom, no claws worth mentioning. They had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Their military technology was adequate. Not impressive. The Vreth had seen dozens of civilizations at humanity's stage of development. They had crushed all of them. But humanity was different in ways the Vreth failed to notice, because the Vreth were looking at the wrong things. They measured power in hull strength and weapons yield. They did not measure it in something far more dangerous, in memory. In the capacity to hold a grudge across generations. In the absolute, bone-deep, civilizational commitment to the idea that when you kill one of ours, you do not get to simply walk away. The Vreth High Command had run the calculations before authorizing the strike on Outpost Kestrel-7. Their projections showed a 91% probability that humanity would lodge a formal protest with the Concordat, perhaps impose economic sanctions, and eventually accept a negotiated settlement in exchange for resource rights along the Tarvis corridor. The other 9% of their probability model simply read, unknown response. Insufficient data. They should have paid more attention to that 9%. The response from Earth was not what anyone expected. There was no emergency broadcast. No emergency session of the Terran Assembly. No fleet mobilization orders transmitted on open channels. No angry speeches from the Secretary General. No ultimatums. No deadlines. Just silence. For 72 hours, humanity said absolutely nothing. The other species of the Concordat were baffled. The Vreth were puzzled, and then quietly pleased. Silence, in their experience, meant submission. It meant the humans were calculating how much they could lose and still survive. It meant they were preparing to negotiate from a position of weakness. Ambassador Vreth, the Vreth diplomatic liaison to the Concordat, sent a private communication to his superiors on day 2 of the silence. "They are afraid," he wrote. As expected. The creature that cannot defend its own outpost cannot defend its own home. We should press our advantage. Demand the Tarvis corridor in its entirety. On the 73rd hour, humanity finally responded. Not with words. The Terran Fleet, all of it, every ship, every carrier, every destroyer and frigate and long-range missile platform that humanity possessed, disappeared from every known port, every patrol route, every monitored position in the galaxy simultaneously. They were just gone. No flight plans filed. No destination codes transmitted. No communication of any kind. Just gone. The Concordat tracking network searched for 48 hours before they found the first thermal signature, a massive heat bloom. Deep in the unmonitored space between the Tarvis system and the core Vreth worlds. And then another. And another. Every single human warship was traveling in complete radio silence, in tight formation, through uncharted dark space, moving in a direction that pointed, with geometric precision, at the heart of the Vreth Dominion. At their homeworld. Vreth Prime. Ambassador Vreth sent another message to his superiors that night. This one was considerably shorter. It contained only a question. What have we done? The Vreth Dominion had the largest military in that region of the galaxy. 800 years of conquest had given them that. They had fortress stations, planetary shields, orbital defense platforms that could reduce an attacking fleet to vapor at extreme range. They had never lost a defensive engagement in 4 centuries. What they did not have was time. The Terran Fleet did not approach on predictable vectors. It did not announce itself. It did not form up in the parade ground configurations that served as the traditional opening gesture of fleet warfare. It came out of dark space in 11 separate strike groups simultaneously, hitting every major Vreth military installation in their home system at exactly the same moment. The battle logs recovered later by Concordat observers described what followed not as a battle, but as a systematic and methodical destruction of everything that could shoot back. Admiral Yasha Chen commanded the Terran Fleet from the bridge of the carrier Indomitable. She was 53 years old. She had served in the fleet for 31 years. She had a photograph of Outpost Kestrel-7 pinned to the inside of her command station, not as a reminder of why she was here, because she did not need a reminder. She had it there so the crew could see it. So no one would ever be tempted to think of what they were doing as something abstract. 43 people. 43 names on a station manifest. She knew every single one. The Vreth defensive grid was impressive. In a conventional engagement, it might have held. But humanity had spent 72 hours of silence doing something very specific, not panicking, not negotiating, not mourning. Planning. Every target in the Vreth home system had been assigned, cross-assigned, and triple-assigned. Every contingency had been mapped. Every orbital platform, every fighter bay, every command node, all of it had a corresponding missile. A corresponding strike package, a corresponding ship with a specific job and a specific order. The Vreth had expected an angry, emotional charge. What they got was a machine. Within 4 hours, the orbital defense grid of Vreth Prime was gone. Not damaged. Not degraded. Gone. Within 6 hours, every military shipyard in the system was a debris field. Within 9 hours, Vreth Prime itself was ringed by human ships, not to bombard the surface, but to enforce a complete blockade. And then Admiral Chen did something that confused the Vreth deeply. She stopped. She transmitted a single message to the Vreth High Command on the surface. In their own language, so there would be no ambiguity whatsoever. You attacked 43 unarmed people on Outpost Kestrel-7. Give me their names. All 43. You will speak their names aloud, on a broadcast frequency that reaches every corner of your dominion, so that every one of your people understands what you bought when you killed ours. After that, we talk. The Vreth High Command deliberated for 3 hours. They gave her the names. The aftermath of what the Concordat historians would eventually call the Kestrel incident was studied for decades. Not because of the military outcome. The outcome had been, from a purely technical standpoint, almost a foregone conclusion once humanity committed its full force. No, it was studied because of what it revealed about humans. About how they thought. About what they were. The Vreth had made a mistake that many species before them had made, though few had survived the consequences quite so close to total annihilation. They had looked at humanity and seen a young species, a soft species, a species still finding its footing among the stars. They had seen the careful diplomats, the earnest scientists, the merchants and explorers and colonists. They had concluded that softness was fragility. They had not understood that softness and fragility are completely different things. The Kethseri, a species that had been conquered by the Vreth 400 years prior and reduced to a client state, sent a message to the Concordat General Assembly 3 weeks after the Kestrel incident. The message was brief. It said only, "We knew. We tried to warn you." Every species that has ever tried to harm what humans love has learned the same lesson. They do not escalate gradually. They do not negotiate from fear. When you cross that particular line, when you take from them, when you kill what is theirs, they do not send a response. They become one. The Vreth Dominion did not collapse after Kestrel. Humanity did not want their territory, did not want their resources, did not want their submission. The terms of the settlement were simple and stark: reparations to the families of the 43. Full acknowledgement of guilt. A war crimes tribunal for the commanders who ordered the strike. And one final condition that the Concordat Diplomatic Corps found more chilling than anything else on the list. A monument. On Vreth Prime itself. Built by Vreth hands. With the names of all 43 people from Outpost Kestrel-7 carved into it, in both languages, large enough to be read from the street. So they would never forget who they had killed. So their children would know. So their children's children would know. The Vreth High Elder who signed the settlement agreement reportedly asked the human negotiator why this specific condition mattered so much. Why a monument? Why names? The negotiator, a quiet woman named Dr. Parisa Sadeghi, who had no military rank and no political title, just a background in history and a commission from the Terran Assembly to close this chapter, looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because killing someone is easy, she said. Remembering them is hard. We want you to do the hard thing. We want you to look at those names every day and understand that those were people. Not assets. Not acceptable losses. Not a calculated provocation designed to test our response. People. And we will not let you make them abstract. Not ever. The High Elder reportedly said nothing after that. The monument was built. It still stands today. There is a word in the Kethsari language, a language that is 800 years older than Vreth, and far older than anything humans have ever spoken, for the particular kind of danger that humanity represents. The word does not translate perfectly into English. The closest approximation is something like, the wrath of the careful. It means, beware the creature that does not lash out in anger, because that creature is not afraid. It means, beware the species that goes quiet when you expect them to scream, because they are not in shock. They are thinking. They are counting. They are building a response that is not driven by emotion but by something far colder and far more total, by principle. By the absolute refusal to live in a universe where this was allowed to happen and nothing was done. The Vreth had assumed that humanity's hesitation was weakness. It was not hesitation. It was precision. 43 people died on Outpost Kestrel-7 on what the Vreth called their day of glory. Every single one of them was remembered. Every single one of them was named. Every single one of them had people on Earth and in the colonies and on a dozen different stations and ships who heard what happened and made the same silent, absolute decision without anyone having to ask them to. Not this. Not without consequence. Not without cost. Not ever again. The Vreth had thought they were dealing with a young species. Inexperienced. Easily cowed. Still learning the rules of a galaxy that had been old before Earth's sun was born. They were right about one thing. Humanity was still learning. But what they were learning, what they had been learning since the first time someone tried to take something from them and discovered that the thing they had taken was only the beginning of their problems, was not how to survive in this galaxy. It was how to make sure this galaxy understood them. The lesson was received. The monument still stands. And the stars, every star within 1,000 light-years of Vreth Prime, shine a little differently now. Not brighter. Just different. Like they know something lives out there in the dark. Something patient. Something that remembers.